Smile.
But I'm not happy.
People
Why are you
staring.
wearing that?
I don't want to do this.
You have to. They'll know
No one
something's
cares about
wrong.
your
Why
life.
is that bad?
Nobody cares. They won't understand.
Nobody
I want to
cares.
go home.
You'll hurt their feelings.
This was
wrong with
ridiculous.
you?
What are we
Why
even
just
talking
keep
about?
them
Just you want
like
to keep them
you?
happy.
What if they
They're
think
gonna
you're
be mean.
stupid?
Just keep them happy. Just keep them happy. Just lie.
I'm not here to sugarcoat, life's already a bumpy road. Too much shelter causes pain, let's just be real honest. Things are gonna knock you down, avoidance will not help you out. Let's talk it through, here me and you, let's keep it real honest.
Hi, you're listening to Real Honest, the podcast where I share candid thoughts and feelings about life, love, and relationships, God and church, adulting, the workplace, and all the things in between. However you found me, I hope you feel seen, learn something, shift your perspective, and walk away empowered to live honestly. I have a guest today. My very good friend Shawn came on the podcast to talk about accidental leadership. He's going to share some of his story and kind of just how he sort of fell into a leadership role, experiencing imposter syndrome, and kind of how he's gone about overcoming that and what makes a good leader. Shawn and I met through our church that we go to, and this conversation is going to be pretty focused on church leadership because that is the specific example that he's giving, but it really is applicable to any type of leadership. If you have ever felt inadequate or experienced imposter syndrome or just kind of feeling like, I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing, but I've been given this responsibility, I think that this conversation will resonate with you. Here we go. Okay. Well, so first tell us who you are.
I'm Shawn. I'm just the guy trying to make it through this world the best I know how. I don't have a long list of accomplishments. I don't have a podcast. I have a steering wheel and a brain to think with. A little bit about my background. I've been a leader of my church, which is going to play a heavy part tonight. I'm a leader at my church. I've been doing so for 6 years, somewhere in that neighborhood, ever since right before COVID.
Wow.
And learning as I go.
Okay. So what brought on the topic of accidental leadership for you?
It's something that I've been battling and struggling with. Like, how did I get here? Because something a lot of people do not know, I've got two ways how I came to elevation.
Which is our church, by the way, for anyone who doesn't know.
Correct. Okay. I had a deep hatred for megachurches.
I don't think you told me this.
I haven't told a lot of people, especially those that were in my leadership chain. I would never repeat this in a little monthly meeting. I would never repeat this. I always felt megachurches were nothing but money grabbers. They were the money changers that were in Jesus' time in the temple. And how dare someone stand up there on a stage after getting out of a car that I probably could not make enough to pay for in 10 years.
Yeah.
How can these people be so well off and have people in their congregation on food stamps? That is where my tension was.
When you decided to visit, what was going on? Or I guess, was it start streaming for you, I guess?
Yeah, I was, well, everybody has their biggest pastors that they automatically think of when I say, mega pastor.
Yeah.
And one of them is quite famous for that. And I started listening to his sermons to get information, say, well, this is false. This is just wrong, dead teaching. And this is where the story I normally tell on how I came to elevation started. That man that I was thinking of was not preaching that day. It was a different ministry. And he had me crying by the end of his testimony. I'm a grown man, and I was sitting there crying, just hearing everything that he had went through. But I was still trying to check myself. Okay, when did they ask for the money? Never did. But I started looking into that pastor that was preaching that day. His name was John Gray, Pastor John Gray.
Let me go back for a second because you disliked megachurches, but you were watching a service of a megachurch.
Right, to get information to use to reinforce my views and beliefs. I was looking for confirmation bias.
Got it. That makes sense. And so how long had you been watching that particular pastor until the person that you enjoyed guested?
Are you meaning watching on a regular basis, or just listening to clips online?
Either one. Like, is this something that like you were watching the pastor every Sunday and then suddenly there was a guest one day? Or it was like you had heard of him, you knew of him, you were watching random clips here and there, and then one day a guest popped up and you were like, huh, who's that?
Yeah, I knew of him and I heard of him, and this was actually the first sermon that I dedicated to sit down and listen to. The
Okay.
very first one. I did not know there was going to be a guest speaker that day, and
And what was
I
it that prompted you to sit down and watch a full sermon?
to gain that confirmation bias to
Okay.
pick apart the sermon.
Gotcha. And then there was a guest, and so that kind of threw a wrench in your plans.
Yes. So I started looking into this John Gray, what he taught, watching clips of him, trying to see if this guy was grounded. And I really liked what I heard from Pastor Gray. I actually started attending and tithing to his church. And I knew that my whole plans had gone seriously awry, but still wasn't big on mega churches. But at the time, Pastor Gray, the church he was leading was not a mega church. So I kind of, I guess, balanced it out with that.
Okay.
And then the more I listened to his sermons, the Facebook or the YouTube algorithm kicked in. And I started seeing clips from Pastor Stephen Furtick. And I'm like, this is the hot plate right here. All the stuff I've heard about this guy, God broke the law for love. What? No, he did not. Just all the talking points.
Mm-hmm.
But I started listening to his clips. And I'm going to get something from this guy. And it turned into the same thing. I like what this guy has to say. What he was saying was very specific to issues that were going on in my life at the time.
Mm-hmm.
Very eerily accurate. And I started attending weekly services online. And it went from a position of trying to disprove what he was saying to this feels like home. This feels like my home church. Doesn't anybody know me, but this feels like home.
Yeah.
And then they started talking about things about e-groups. So I started attending one. And it was because my leader in that group is why I became a leader.
What is the timeline at this point? So, like, from when you discovered Pastor Gray, like, how long were you with his church before the algorithm showed you Pastor Stephen? And then how long were you watching Elevation before you were like, I want to volunteer?
The time with Pastor Gray, I would have to say that was about 6 or 7 months. And
Okay.
I've been seeing Fardick clips pop up. To give you an idea, this was a while back. I think this was even before he was growing a beard. Because I remember a lot of the sermons was that clean shaven baby face.
I love how we can track it based on like his hair or his facial hair.
I used to tell my e-group leader, I'm like, is this BB or AB? Before beard or after beard? So the time I was attending Gray's online services, I would have to say about 6 to 8 months. And then I was watching the clips from Verdict for a few months until I started attending Elevation regularly. So I'd have to say it was close to a year before, from the time I set this out to the time I joined Elevation was about 1 year. And it was about another year after that before I became e-group leader.
Okay. And when you decided to start leading a group, is that the first volunteer, what am I trying to say? The like of all of the options to volunteer with the online campus, is that the only one you explored or were there other ones that you looked into before you settled on that?
I looked into several others. I looked into their outreach program, and they just didn't have any or enough events in my area to catch my attention.
Okay.
I looked at online, but at the time I was more focused on my career, or not, excuse me, online, but chat moderation, YouTube chat moderation.
Yeah.
So what I was watching, I wasn't able to get in the chat and all that stuff. I went through several. I looked at not house parties, watch parties.
Watch parties.
But there were some provisions in that I was not very wild about. So I just stuck to online e-grouping.
And I guess just quick context for anybody that doesn't know. So Sean and I are both part of a church that is based in Charlotte, North Carolina, which is Elevation Church. And they have a huge online campus. So it's really considered a global church, but they have, I think it's 12, is it 12 physical campuses that are throughout the Carolinas? And then there's a couple in Florida and a couple in Canada, but the rest of the world is the online campus. And so the
Mhm.
online team has a bunch of different opportunities for people that want to volunteer. One of them is e-groups, which is leading a weekly small group, or I think it could be bi-weekly, but leading a small group that meets on Zoom or Teams or Google Meet or whatever you want to use. And then they have watch parties, which is when somebody hosts the worship experience in their house. So it would be like you invite people to come to your house on a Sunday morning, you pick whatever service time. And I've only attended one watch party. They had snacks. That was cool. It was pretty small. I think it was three to five people. But the idea is that you're still watching church online, but you're doing it in community with other people. And then Shawn had mentioned the YouTube chat moderation. So that is people that during the live worship experiences, there are volunteers that are in the chat to answer people's questions, to pray for people, to send people links. Like if they mention during the announcements, like YouthX is coming up, get your kids signed up. Like they'll throw them links for that. If you've newly accepted Jesus, they'll put links in the chat for you to be able to get connected and that kind of thing. There's also outreach opportunities, which as Shawn mentioned, that's kind of more dependent on where in the world you are. There are some cities that have a very large elevation outreach population, and there are some cities that don't have any of the organizations that they partner with. So it just kind of depends where you live based on what's available to you.
Correct.
And so you picked e-groups. And so how did that come about, and how did you get started with that?
Well, it actually started during my first group where I've got this talent where I can just talk endlessly, and I've got a funny story about that we
We
share
share
someday,
that
though.
talent, so it's fine.
Especially when I'm not going to get off that rabbit hole. My my group leader, which all this time later I am still very close personal friends with.
That's awesome.
I I approached him, because they were starting a leader push because e-groups were growing and growing rapid. So
And
they were
how
doing
long
it.
were you a member of his group before you started thinking about leading your own?
I think it was about 6 months,
Okay.
6 7 months, somewhere in that neighborhood. And I asked him, I said, Do you think I would make a good leader? And he goes, I was actually going to be calling you this week to see if you would consider it. And I went through the training process that they had at the time and launched an eagle. And when that Zoom camera came on for that first time, that was the first one of the several times in my life that I felt inadequate and intimidated.
Interesting.
It's a whole lot different when you're on one side of the camera, but when everyone's quote unquote looking at you, that's a whole different ballgame.
Yeah.
And it got to the point where it was like, am I supposed to be doing this? Did I just get caught up in emotions? Did I just get caught up in feelings? How did I get to this place if these people, saw how I lived my day-to-day life? I'd get kicked out of here. I am just so inadequate on this. I'm not consistent. I'm just all the negativity just started flooding in. And I
Hmm.
started fighting back against it. And Sam, I remember one night before group, I was taking a shower. I just finished some yard work. And I wanted to get cleaned up, so I was taking a shower, and I busted out crying in the shower,
Oh,
just just from the weight of the inadequacy, and staying in that shower, crying out, water being down on me. I pray. I said, God, I can't do this. I cannot do this anymore. You know, you've entrusted me to share your word, to share your gospel. I can't do this. And it was there in that shower, I had the realization of he already knew that. He didn't expect me to.
yeah.
I was carrying more weight than he ever intended. All he asked me to do was lead that group. And I was trying to take on the burdens of family problems, marriage problems, life problems, loneliness. That was a big deal in isolation, if you don't remember.
Mm-hmm.
Weakness, type, just everything that was going on in our culture at that time.
Yeah.
I was trying to carry it for everybody.
And when you say that all God asked you to do was lead the group, you mean physically like show up every week, start the meeting, ask these discussion questions that have already been pre-written.
Correct. That's all I was supposed to do.
Yeah.
When I started looking at it through that viewpoint of someone comes to me and says, Shawn, my marriage is falling apart. There's absolutely nothing I can tell them to change that. Absolutely nothing. I cannot change people's hearts or minds. I can tell them what the Bible says about it.
Mm-hmm.
I can be there as a friend. I can be there to listen. I can be there to discuss. But I do not have the power to change the root cause. I was trying to lean into my own mind, my own knowledge, and my own understanding. And I heard this story about an orange tree. If you have an orange tree and you try to feed it oranges, or you try to, water it with orange juice, that tree's going to die because what that tree produces was never meant to be consumed by itself. It was supposed to be consumed for those around it. And that orange tree needed someone to come water it. It needed a source outside of itself. And that's the position I was in. I was trying to feed myself with from what I was producing, from what I was teaching, from what I was leading,
Mm-hmm.
and completely neglecting the outside source.
So at what point do you feel like you came to this realization? Like when you look back and you wonder, how did I get here? Do you still wonder that today? Is that something like, so you've been leading for 6 years now? Like,
Mhm.
how long of that you're in that 6 years were you in this place of like feeling inadequate? Was it like the first few days, the first few months, years?
I'm still there.
Where do you think that's like the feeling is coming from?
Man, you're asking some tough ones. Not tough ones as in hard to answer, but tough ones as in tough.
Yeah.
It comes from a lifelong of feeling like I was a failure. I've never been great or successful at anything. I've been in my career for 25 years and I'm still doing the exact same thing I was doing on day one, but it pays the bills and has money left over. I know my own faults. I know my own failures. I know my own struggles. And if I was, and I have this false sense of self image that I should be so much further along by now. I shouldn't be struggling with the things I struggled with. With my addictions, I've got a horrible smoking addiction. If I believe, well, it's my mind getting me to believe that if I believe half of what I taught, I would be able to defeat things like that in a heartbeat. So therefore, I am a failure. And then I have to bring myself back home to you are not the one doing this.
Mm-hmm.
This is not your power to get this done. If God did not want to use you, he would not have asked you. Then just step out into the permission and the grace that you've been given.
Yeah, what was it the guest said? I think it was Rich Wilkerson that said this weekend. I mean, he's not the first person to say it, but I just remember he said it in this weekend service. The whole God doesn't call the qualified, he qualifies the called.
Yes. I haven't watched the full summer, probably about the first 10 minutes of it so far this week.
Okay. But I think that you and I had a conversation about this, if I remember correctly, like when we were going through the process to become coordinators. Like, I think we had a conversation about this, and I was telling you how, like, I don't think that, like, the fact that you smoke and, like, are actively, like, that's a behavior that you've been trying to quit for a long time and you're actively trying to quit and that, like, we always
Mhm.
celebrate every time you're, like, got down to, from however many packs to however many packs, but like we celebrate every little change.
Hmm.
But I think that we talked about this, and I was telling you like from my perspective as like a member of a group, I would rather hear from a leader who is actively struggling with something and telling me like these are the scriptures I hold on to, or this is what I pray about and this is how I see God working in and through me, versus the leader who like does everything right and is like,
Hmm.
I went to school and I never tasted alcohol and I never tried a drug and I married my high school sweetheart and we have 2.5 kids and a dog and everything is perfect and it's all because we love Jesus. Like I wouldn't trust that person because I would think that they were lying,
Uh-huh.
or I would think that the theology that I grew up with, where I believed that everything in life that happened was a direct, like, reward or punishment from God. And I grew up believing that, like, if I stubbed my toe, it was because I told a white lie. Or, like if I spilled coffee on me, it was because I wronged somebody or whatever. And I would think that like that leader with that perfect life, like, oh, like, look, God really rewarded them because they're such a good Christian. And I
Hmm.
must be horrible because I don't have 2.5 kids and a dog or a husband. And like life just didn't go that way for me.
And I guarantee you that pastor would not allow a microphone in his car or his living
Right.
room. Guarantee it. Because there's going to be holes. There are going to be holes somewhere. There's either going to be holes in that man's genes or holes in that man's life.
Mm-hmm.
There will be holes, and I would like you said, much rather see a pastor up there that doesn't have his crap all together. It is struggles with anxiety, with depression, with whatever. But he gets up there and you can tell that's where his messages come from. And you can tell that because you fight the exact same.
Yeah. So why do you feel like becoming a leader was an accident?
I never got in this to be a leader. I've never liked titles. I've never liked elevation. Not the church, but the process, the elevation.
Like being elevated.
Right, being elevated. That's just never been my thing. I've never liked eyes looking at me. And so I never set out to even regularly attend a, a mega church in good faith. I never set out, much less to be part of their leadership team. And or much less a leader at a church at all. I grew up thinking I didn't know enough. I wasn't well enough to attend any kind of seminary. I've never received any kind of formal education. I feel that there are things I've done in my life that should disqualify me. But we go back to God doesn't call the qualified.
Mm-hmm.
And I believed the lie for so many years that what I had done disqualified me when actuality my experiences was the exact thing, the scars that it left, the trauma that it left was the exact same thing that God wanted me to give to him so he could mold it and then use it. That's what I do. At every meeting, try to use my scars and my experiences. There's a difference between scars and wounds, as pastors preached. Wounds. If you try to or if you try to teach from a wounded place, all you're going to do is bleed all over everybody,
Mm-hmm.
and that doesn't help anything. But as Jesus, after he came down off the cross and he revealed himself alive, he showed people his scars. He showed people this is what hurt me, but it didn't kill me. This is what formed me. This is who I am today.
Can you give an example of what sharing something like that, like in a group, would look like?
Let's say, for instance, emotional abuse. Okay, emotional abuse. When someone comes looking for guidance, this is where I am at this. The leadership that would be formed in that type of situation or a display in that type of situation would be, I can, never, I would never enter into, one diminishing their experience ever. I would never do that. But it would affirm that, or I would affirm that I've been I've been in their situation. Maybe not their exact situation, but I would share my, you know, my story. And one thing I always try to stay away from is bumper sticker phrases like "it gets better" or
Mm-hmm.
"keep holding on," "keep fighting." Okay, well, yeah, I've been doing that for how many years now, and look where it's gotten me. Tell me something I can use. And I lean into more what are you immediately safe, so forth, so on, immediate needs. It sounds cheap, but my first step is to listen.
I don't think it sounds cheap. I think that makes a lot of sense. And I guess my question, or like what I'm trying to clarify for listeners, because we had mentioned earlier, right, that like you feel
Mhm.
not totally qualified to be a leader, but you are leading. And then that started though with hearing God say, like, all I asked you to do was lead the group. Like you just have to start
Mhm.
Zoom. The questions are pre-written. Like that's where it starts. But like leading a group, especially one that's meeting every week indefinitely, like you get all kinds of people from all different backgrounds and all walks of faith, and you become their main point of contact. It starts with just like people that are maybe brand new to the church that are asking, like, hey, what are the service times? Where are the physical campuses? Do I live near one? How can I
Mhm.
volunteer? But then you become almost like a coach or a counselor to a lot of these people. And some weeks somebody can come with something really heavy, and you have to be able to navigate, like you have to know the group dynamic to know, like, is this a group where like, can I let this person share right now, or do I need to pivot this and like move that to a one-on-one conversation that I have with them later, or
Right,
like,
right.
can I let them share to a certain extent for a certain amount of time? And so kind of like that, I think, makes the responsibility feel so much heavier. So I just imagine you kind of fighting between like, okay, I hear you, God, like I just have to show up. But then the more you show up, the more the responsibility increases, because now you have more people joining your group and more people relying on you. And then just kind of how do you wrestle with, well, all I was asked to do is show up and I've been doing that, but now it's really turned into something else.
Depending on the subject matter, I would say, hey, this is way above my pay grade because that's what we need. Sometimes what we need to realize is that there are things that we are not capable or equipped to handle. But something interesting I that I have noticed when people join a group, and this does tie back in. When people join a group, they join where they are at in their life at that point. So they are viewing everybody from that lens. I've come to learn that they feel that they too have to put all everything they're going through on the table to say, look, I belong.
Mm-hmm.
And I've had confrontation about this, where, someone was, shared, maybe even overshared, but it was nothing inappropriate. So I just let them go, say, well, they kind of took over group time. And that is something I've always been consistent. If someone wants to talk, they're going to talk because I've been told not to talk in groups. And so I give them that space. I've always been consistent on that. And the person that, when someone approached me on that, I said, did I not do the exact same thing for you? Did I not let you get out what you needed to get out? But I don't let it continue on to a second and definitely not a third group. Because at that point, when they start repeating themselves, they start getting deeper into it to where
Mm-hmm.
you need to start pointing them towards qualified pastoral counseling. And you've got to be able to differentiate, is this something that this person is sharing to belong, to make them think that they need to belong, or is this going to be a continued thing that needs ongoing care? And if it is something that needs ongoing care, which I've done plenty of times, is maybe after group or the following day, hey, thank you for being vulnerable. Thank you for sharing. Thank you for putting things out there like that. But you may not know, you may not fully understand the situation you're in now. And I point you to someone that can talk to you and get you resources that you need to be able to deal with this.
I also just want to say, though, I feel like the fact that you have been in groups where you were told not to talk or that you were talking too much, and that makes you as a leader very sensitive to that, and that you're always going to give people their time and space to share, I feel like that's exactly what makes you qualified, because there are so many people that are going to need that group. And I think that's why, like, every the experience that every individual leader brings is specific for a reason. Like the first group that I joined, everybody in the group was my mom's age or older, and at the time I was having issues with my mom. So like when I was bringing like prayer requests and giving examples of like conversations we had had that hurt me, they were all imagining themselves as the mother in the situation, and they would trying to explain to me what she meant, and they're like, yeah, those weren't the best words, but like here's what she was trying to say. And that wasn't helpful for me at the time. I really needed somebody to say like, I hear you, I know what you're going through, like that wasn't okay for your mother to say to you.
Mhm.
And I don't think like there was nothing wrong with like that leader or the people in the group. It just wasn't what I needed at the time. And like I'm currently in a group where they're really good at keeping it to an hour, and they give people time to share. But it's like if we talk so much on the first question, then we just only get through the first question. And I've also been in groups where people are like, it's 90 minutes and we're going to ask a question, and there's going to be 2 minutes for people to answer, and we need everyone to keep it to like 20 seconds maximum, like give a short
I
response.
could. I have the same introduction whenever we get new people. I tell them this group is scheduled for an hour. I cannot remember the last time we lasted only an hour, but you need to keep in mind this is an e-group. You are at home. You have a family. You have responsibilities. I ask for an hour. If you can stay longer, great. If you need to go, you need to focus on your personal life long before you focus on this group.
Hmm.
And they hold me to it. There are people that leave 1 hour on the dot. And there are people that will stick in that group 2, 3 hours at a time. The longest group I've ever had go was 9 hours.
Wow.
I ended up setting my phone down because it was back in the days of Zoom where if the leader left, everybody left. It just ended the whole thing. If the host left, it ended the chat. So I set my phone down and I went to the store. I'd
Yeah.
ran out of everything.
I
I
don't
was
think
like,
I could ever be in a group that long, but I'm sure the people that were there that day really needed it. And so it's awesome that
mhm.
like you kept the room open for them to have the time and space to do that.
And you brought up, how others, limit talk, give everybody a chance to speak. I've actually got two things on that. When I internally clock a successful meeting, that is a meeting where I speak minimally to not at all. If I open up, hey, what y'all think about this week's sermon? And then it explodes, yeah, I'll mute my camera, I'll mute my microphone, I'll mute everything, and I'll just sit back and let it run
Hmm.
because I don't want the group focused on the groups are not there for the leaders, the groups are there for the members.
Yeah.
And the whole point is for them to be able to grow in their walk, in their relationship with Christ, not to hear me speak, because I'm going to be wrong I'd say about 6 times out of 10. I don't want to say nine. Because I'm going to be wrong a lot of times, because as you can tell in this interview, maybe I don't follow questions exactly like I should. Maybe I don't follow a preset or a preconceived idea of how things should go. If I can't do it, I know others can. And I may not be the one that someone needs to hear from. A woman going through woman issues doesn't need to hear from a middle-aged male or truck driver. They don't need that. They need to hear from one of their peers, just like you were saying. They don't need to hear from a motherly or a parental figure or someone old enough to be their parents. They need to hear from someone and conversate with someone that is on their level, that has been through their exact experiences, how they maneuvered it, how they navigated it, and how they got out of it, and how they turned it over to me.
Yeah. And I think that's also what a great leader does. Like, I feel like people might hear like you going on mute and stepping back and like just letting the conversation flow. People are like, well, how is that leading? And it's like, well, it's leading to observe and know what the group dynamic is and what the group needs. And like you just said, like if the person sharing and maybe asking for advice need something that like you don't have a good response to or you don't have experience with, but you know that other members of the group do, and you give them the space to jump in and help.
Hmm. And I try to do that. I try to do that as much as often. I look for that opportunity as much as I can because in my own group, I do not call myself the leader. I refer to myself as a facilitator that got suckered into paying for his Zoom account because that's how I want to be viewed. I want to be the guy that paid for the meeting, please. That's all. That's what I want to be known for.
Yeah.
So if someone shows up and they don't hear a word from me, one single word from me, but they got what they needed that night, then I was successful.
I love that.
And even now, you brought up when we were becoming coordinators again. I've stepped all the way back. I don't want to say I'm just a e-group leader because I don't believe anybody is just anything.
Mm-hmm.
But I've stepped back to being solely an e-group leader because I started noticing a change in the culture where people were starting to flaunt their titles.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a coordinator. I'm this. I'm this level of leadership. I'm that level of leadership. And I'm like, I just want to get people closer to God. That's all I want. I don't care about title. You were a much better fit for that position as a coordinator.
I didn't last in that role either, though.
You physically did. Do you not realize the impact you've made? Do you know who everybody compares themselves to? Every time something comes up, well, Samantha would have done it this way. This is how Samantha needed it. This is how Samantha would have done it. This is how Samantha would have seen it. And that is the perfect example of accidental leadership. You intentionally led in your positions. But even now, Sam, you are an accidental leader.
I don't think I've ever even thought of it that way because I think that I might have told you this before too, but I think when I first became a leader, it wasn't like there was a call, like a need for leaders. It was like I wanted to make friends and I was like, I keep joining groups and I'm not seeing anyone my age, so I'm going to start a group for people in their 20s and like see what happens. And it was very selfish where I was just like, I want to find friends. And I remember like we would be in all these meetings and the staff would always say like, remember your why. Like, why did you start leading a group? And always come back to that. And everybody would say like, oh, I was praying and God told me to lead a group, or I was watching and Pastor Steven said, lead a group. And I was like, he's talking to me. And I would never say my why out loud because it was always like, I wanted to make friends. I don't feel like I had enough friends my age. I had this really close-knit group in high school and we went to college and it fell apart. And I had spent my life since then trying to build this group again. And I think it was probably at one of the leader advances when I finally like told a staff member this, and they were like, I have a letter from one of the first people who joined your group. And this woman had like written me a letter to like thank me for leading, and like, she was writing her dissertation for her master's degree at the time, or her PhD, one of those at the time. And she even like thanked me in her dissertation because the group was like something like consistent throughout of a lot of change that she was going through that was helpful. And she said like she was praying for a group of people in their 20s like the day before like my group popped up online. And so essentially the staff member was saying to me, she's like just because you started this group because you wanted to make friends, that's not necessarily a negative or a wrong motivation. It's the motivation that God knew was going to get you to do it. But like you have at least this one person who was praying for your group specifically and was in your group for the first 4 years of its tenure before like she moved on to something else. And like that still is important. And I think, like when you talk about accidental leadership, I feel like people that like lead on purpose, that like sign up to lead and are like, I want to be in charge. I feel like those people look for these types of experiences to say like, yeah, come to me. I'm going to give you advice. I'm going to help you, and I feel like you and I were very kind of like, I can do this. Like I have the skills, I have the time, kind of, why not?
Hmm.
And I think, yeah, that's why I don't really think about the impact. Like when I became a coordinator, I just saw it as like, I'm filling a need. I was like, COVID is over, people are going back to work. I work from home. I have a lot of time. I can build these spreadsheets and stuff. Like, why wouldn't I do that with my time? I didn't look at it as like, this is some like I have to captain the ship and build it a certain way.
Hmm. You may not have been looking at it out like that, but that's exactly what you did. And that is the heart of the idea of accidental leadership. And I love how you brought up the why. Because I use that on my managers at my job. When things get when you can tell when a manager's getting burnt out.
Oh, yeah.
I've I have flat out sat in a conference room with one in a requested one-on-one open door meeting. And I flat out said, "Why did you start this job?" And they looked at me shocked. I said, "Dude, you're over it. You are over all this crap you got to put up with. Why did you start this?" And nine times, most of the times you know, it was a strong career path. And I'm like, well, it may be that, but at the same time, you're dealing with real people in real life with real problems, and you're just burnt out. You either need to get back to your why or find a new why. Because even if we don't intend to, our burnout will fall on other people.
Yeah.
Because if they see you don't care, they won't care. There's an old saying that goes, people don't care what you know as much as they care, or as much as they know that you care. I know I butchered that one. So I may be misremembering this. But in the context of church leadership, or let's just say mentorship, in any aspect, that these people, they don't care how much you know about what you're doing. I do not care about what degrees my supervisors, my managers have.
Thanks.
What I need to know is, do they care that I have a family? Do they care that I am dealing with my own fights and my own struggles? And are they willing to work with me all that? And as far as mentorship goes, I have someone joining in a group. It goes back to the ones you said, "Hey, I've got the answers." We've seen plenty of those people come around. We've seen plenty of people that were in this for their own benefit, for their own recognition. And what happened to them? Every single one of them faded out because they were not receiving the recognition they thought they deserved.
Hmm.
And I swear to God, I was going to remember exactly what my main point was on that.
Would you say that the key of a good leader is being able to make people feel seen?
That is one aspect of it. That's basic leadership. Make this person see that. To me, that is one of the basic steps. A good leader does not tell people how to do things. A good leader tells people what needs to be done, and then let them iron out the process. Of course, with your assistance, of course, with your advice and your help, but they are in control of the wheel. Someone comes into group uh, facing whatever problem. I could sit there and tell them exactly how to get through all of that, and until it gets from their mind to their heart, they'll never be successful in that. But if I can teach them how to take control of it, how to take ownership of maybe what they've done to create the problem, because that is
Hmm.
another very important aspect. None of us are innocent in any of our situations.
Yeah.
So if we can get it into our heart what we did wrong, and then apply that into change our behavior, then whoever walked me through that was a successful leader, because they didn't tell me how to get out of or how to change my situation. They taught me how to change the situation on my own. So if I can do that, if I can have that much of an impact where someone can say, "Thank you for hearing me out. Thank you for talking to me. Thank you for advising me. I now know what needs to be changed." Because people will tell you their life story as long as you don't listen to it, but you will never get 100% of the details. The old saying, there's his side, there's her side, then there's the truth. So we are going to get 100% of their side. We're never going to get 100% of the entire situation. So we're going to be speaking into a relationship, speaking into nuances that we have no idea. So instead of saying do A, B, or C, say this is a situation where this is how I would pray from this situation. So whatever you have going on, this is how I would pray for. This is the guidance I would look for. This is the counseling, the therapy that I would, and then you let them work out their own problem. I don't want to phrase it like that because that sounds cold. But let them work out their own problems. But that
I don't
just
think it
goes back
sounds
to what I
cold
was saying.
because I think it kind of goes back to like this is why I really try to just not give people advice at all as a rule. I try to just ask a lot of questions to guide them to their own solution because at the end of the day, I'm like
Mhm.
even if the thing that you're going through is something that I have been through, you and I are different people and we have different needs
Yeah.
and there are different things that we need. So like I don't think it sounds cold at all. I think it's like you can say, "Hey, yeah, I have experience in that thing and here's what I did and here's what I learned from it and here's what I think I would do differently if I encountered that again." But like, I've just shared my story with you. You're hearing this. Like, what parts of that resonate with you? Like, what do you think you want to do?
Well, and that's it. That's exactly the heart of what I was trying to say. Yeah, I just got hung up on let them work it out on their own. No, don't let them work it out on their own. You know, give them the tools they need. Make sure they're
Yeah.
not trying to drive a nail with a screwdriver. There has to be a lot of on the spot wisdom that needs to take place. And if you don't know what to do, flat out ask. I'm trying to remember if it was you or someone else that was venting to me, and I was just putting suggestion after suggestion after suggestion. And then whoever it was got extremely mad. They said, I am not coming to you to fix this. I am coming to you because I need to vent.
It totally could have been me.
That's why I said, I think it was you. I'm not sure because I know one other person it may have been.
Like, did I ask you to fix my problem?
And so it taught me whenever someone starts going off, I say, hey, can we pause a moment? And it takes them by surprise. I'm like, are you here to vent or are you here for advice?
Usually just want to
And,
complain.
Mhm. And that's the answer I get most of the time. I just need a vent. I don't know what to do, and I really don't care to hear anybody's input. And I have to do that with my daughter so all the time. Just today, there was an issue going on with the electric company. Yeah, it was making me mad, but what I can do about it? Absolutely nothing. And she was going off on things that really weren't that big of a deal, but boy, she was fired up. So instead of thinking and saying and doing all this, why don't you try this instead? That's not the role I was needed in at that moment. The role I was needed in is like, I cannot believe they did it. The audacity. What were they thinking?
Yes.
Just egging her on. So instead of the conversation ending up in contention, she's mad at me because I'm not agreeing with her. We ended the conversation laughing.
Yeah. And I think a lot of times too, it's not necessarily about agreeing as it is being heard. Where like, like I feel like a lot of times I have friends that will like call and complain about somebody and they're like, they said this terrible thing to me. And maybe I don't think the thing is so terrible. But so, and I don't have to agree. I don't have to say like, wow, that was an awful thing that they said. That's a terrible person. But I might say like, I hear that person really hurt your feelings. I'm so sorry that your feelings got hurt today. Like, there's a way to validate the way they are feeling without necessarily agreeing with the situation or the feeling. Because that's something that I hear a lot from people when I'm trying to explain the like, can you just validate my feelings better? They always respond with, like,
Mhm.
you just want me to agree with you all the time, and I don't agree with you. And I am just like, well, validating my feelings and agreeing with me are not the same thing.
Right. And you're like, no, I really didn't even ask you to agree.
Yeah.
And well, a closing that I had lined up was, a statement that I kind of quote unquote wrote, and it may refer to things that we didn't cover,
That's
but
okay.
but it's just simply none of this was earned. It was gifted. God led, God let me have a front row seat to what He was already doing. Yes, He is in whatever your situation, be it a mother, be it a housekeeper, whatever it is you do in life, none of it was earned through your own merit or through your own rights. It was a gift to you that God let you have a front row seat to watch how He was working through you. If you don't believe, for those that have kids, watch them go. Those nights you were having your diaper change that maybe you don't remember, or the bottle feedings, or the nights you were sick, or the night your child was sick. All those diapers you changed, those bottles you fed the child, and was there. You nurtured them, you grew them, you loved them, and you watch them grow up into these amazing adults. That is a prime example of the front seat God gave you to watch how He was working through you during the hard times. Because just because somebody's life is going good, that doesn't mean that's the time in their life God blessed them. That is the point in time you're seeing the fruits of the nights of crying, the nights of worry, the nights of stress that we all went through. Those are the fruits of those times starting to pay off. I know this really isn't a religious podcast. I understand that because you have a wide variety of an audience, which is just absolutely amazing. But I feel that I wouldn't be doing my responsibility if I just didn't say a few things. There may be listeners that doesn't believe that there is a God,
Mm-hmm.
or if they do, they've experienced, church hurt. They've experienced unspeakable things at the hands of those that said that they, were the mouthpiece of God. I would just like to take a moment that God still sees you. God still hears you. He is not offended by you. Whatever you feel is keeping you away from Him, or what is keeping Him away from you, whatever your situation, whatever your case is, nothing could be further from the truth. Whatever that thing is exactly what God wants to use to let His glory shine through, because His glory can shine through the darkest of situations. And I will be a testament to that every single day of the week. But most important, He still loves you. You have not, if you are hearing this, I promise you, you have not messed up bad enough. I guarantee it. If you are still drawing breath in your lungs, He still loves you. And if you're away from Him, He's saying, come home. I miss you. I miss talking to you. I miss being your friend. If you don't want to come home, will you at least just talk to me? That is what got me back to Him.
Yeah.
He didn't make me come home first. He came to where I was. And He loved me where I was in spite of where I was.
Thank you so much for coming on the podcast and
Well,
doing a little sermonette.
well, thank you for inviting me. I mean, this is the first time I've ever been invited on a podcast. And if they listen to it, it'll probably be the last.
Thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed the conversation. I hope you learned something or heard something that resonated with you. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, questions for Shawn, if you want to join his small group, if you want to just hit him up and be friends, you can reach out to me at realhonestpod@gmail.com and I'll get you guys connected. Also, if you have any questions, comments, concerns about the podcast in general, you can also reach out to me at realhonestpod@gmail.com. Okay, bye.
I'm not here to sugarcoat, life's already a bumpy road. Too much shelter causes pain, let's just be real honest. Things are gonna knock you down, avoidance will not help you out. Let's talk it through, hear me and you, let's keep it real honest.